The senator from Arizona.
Mr. President, across Arizona, I am hearing from families who are doing everything right. They're working longer hours, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs, budgeting carefully, trying to save for their families and their children's futures. But they're still paying more at the grocery store and more for rent and barely making it from one paycheck to the next. One emergency, whether it's a car repair or a medical bill, could throw the entire monthly budget out of whack. That's what people are living every single day. So when they hear that Congress is once again debating another tax cut, but not for them, for billionaires and giant corporations, they wonder, who in Washington really cares about me? Who is Washington working for? This is a handout to a tiny fraction of some of the wealthiest people in the world, people who already have more money than they could spend in a lifetime. If you raise taxes on the billionaires and multimillionaires, which is what we should be doing, they'd still be billionaires and multimillionaires. But once again, Republicans want to instead cut their taxes, and working families are going to be the ones left holding the bill. Because this debate, it's not about numbers on a spreadsheet. This budget is about what gets cut to pay for those tax breaks. It's about which kid doesn't get a meal at school, which family loses their home to cover medical care for their kid or their parent, which patient skips the medical care they need because Congress decided that billionaires needed a bigger tax break. We don't need to guess what that looks like. Arizonans are already telling me. Angela from Phoenix works in school nutrition. She called my office to speak out against these budget cuts, and I'm going to quote her directly. And this is a quote from Angela. "I work in school nutrition, and I see how many students benefit from the school breakfast and National School Lunch Program. The National School Lunch Program is actually the second largest food nutrition assistance program behind SNAP. And when students participate in these school meal programs, their families benefit and the community benefits." This is still Angela here. If we keep making these cuts, we're going to harm people that are already hurting. People are already struggling out there. We're already struggling. We need these programs invested in, not divested from. And for what? To give cuts to rich people, to billionaires, while all of us suffer. It's not right. Mr. President, Angela is absolutely right. And Desiree from Phoenix wrote to me. She said, this is a quote, "I am a hardworking Arizonan who is watching my family and community struggle while the wealthiest Americans get even richer. I have family members who are disabled and rely on government assistance, programs like SNAP and Social Security disability insurance. These aren't luxuries," she said. "These are lifelines. And yet their benefits are being cut while billionaires and massive corporations get even more tax breaks." This is still a quote from Desiree. "Every time a tax policy favors the ultra-wealthy, it takes food off the tables of families who are barely getting by. It forces people with disabilities to make impossible choices between rent, medication, and groceries. This is not the Arizona I believe in, she said. This is not the America I want to see. We need leaders who fight for us, the working people, the families who are doing everything right and still falling behind. We need tax policies that are fair, that hold the wealthiest accountable, and that protect the programs that keep our most vulnerable from being pushed even further into poverty. This is story number 3 from Nicholas. Now, Nicholas, he's a medical student from Arizona, and he wrote to me about what these cuts would mean for him and his partner, who are both about to graduate with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. And Nicholas said, Congress must pass a budget that benefits Americans instead of slashing funds to essential life-saving programs like Medicaid to finance tax breaks for the wealthy. He said, this is a quote, "I would not have been able to afford health care during medical school without Medicaid. My partner is in the same position. Please consider people like us who rely on these programs so we can stay healthy and continue serving our communities as future physicians." And Lexi from Phoenix, who has had 9 open heart surgeries. She's now in heart failure and she's disabled. Medicaid and SNAP are the only way that she can access the care, medications, and the food she needs to stay alive. Lexi said, in this letter, she said, removing programs such as Medicaid and SNAP would be terribly detrimental to people like myself with disabilities. And she said, I myself, along with other patients with congenital heart disease, whether they be adults or young children looking to stand a chance in the world, would pass away. She said she and others will die. She went on, in a way, I feel as this letter will be pushed aside and ignored. However, I am hopeful that this letter will actually hold to something for the members of the 119th Congress to actually take a stand against Mr. Trump and his administration and their life-threatening agendas. Mr. President, every single one of these stories is a reminder of what's at stake here. These are the voices we should be listening to, not billionaire donors, not corporate lobbyists. And by the way, Elon Musk shouldn't be rigging the federal budget to give himself another tax break. Why is he allowed to do that? I'd rather listen to Nicholas and Desiree and Angela and Lexi. These are the people we should be listening to, not an unelected billionaire working for another billionaire, trying to give billionaires more tax breaks. Mr. President, Arizona families, they're paying attention. I'm sure Kansas families are as well. And they're asking us to do the right thing. These are the people who will pay the price if Senate Republicans move forward with this plan. And it's a steep price. And let's be clear, this is not the first time that we've seen this playbook. This is a rerun. In 2017, President Trump signed into law the so-called Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's what they called it. It slashed the tax rate for big corporations It showered benefits to the top 1% and promised big things. It promised higher wages for workers. It promised a manufacturing boom and stronger economic growth. Now, you want to know what really happened? Workers didn't get big raises. There was no manufacturing boom. Instead, corporations used the money to buy back stock and enrich their executives and their shareholders. Big surprise. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the top 5% of earners received nearly half of the tax benefits. Think about that. The top 5%, they got half. A family making $30,000 a year, you know how much they got? $130. But those in the top 0.1%, the ones making more than $5 million, they got a $278,000 tax break. The rich got richer. Everybody else got screwed. And now, some of my colleagues, they want to do it again. They want to extend those tax breaks permanently. And they're trying to hide the true cost of this using a gimmick called the, get this, the current policy baseline. This is a pretend way to make these tax breaks look like they don't cost anything. But, Mr. President, we know better. And I think the American people know better. And according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, extending these tax cuts like they're planning to do would add over $4.5 trillion to the debt in the next 10 years, and that would add up to about, over the next 30 years, it's $37 trillion. That means doubling our current national debt, doubling it, just to give a tax cut to rich people. And the Congressional Budget Office, who is the gold standard for this stuff, says that would push our national debt to 214% of GDP by 2054. 214%. That is an economic disaster for our country. And all of this for what? So someone with more money than they can spend in a lifetime gets even more money? Let me put this into perspective here, Mr. President. The median household income in this country is about $80,000 per year. It would take 1,245 years, about 15 lifetimes, for someone making that much to earn $100 million, over 1,200 years. And yet, some of my colleagues think that those are the people who need a tax cut. And this isn't just about tax policy. It's about the kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a country that hands billionaires another break while a kid goes without lunch in school? Where a retired veteran living on Social Security is told there's no money left for him. But there's plenty for the wealthiest Americans. That's the choice in front of us. Because this budget doesn't just fail working families, it punishes them. It says, if you're doing everything right, if you're working hard, if you're raising your kids, if you're paying your taxes, you're on your own. That's not just bad policy, Mr. President, that's wrong. And let's be clear, this Republican math is not fair. And Arizonans, my constituents, are seeing through this. I guess they probably are in Oklahoma as well. Everyone in this chamber should think about their priorities and the priorities of the people they came here to represent. So let's stop wrecking the finances of working families just to hand out more tax breaks for billionaires. Let's build an economy that actually works for the people who make the economy run, instead of imposing tariffs that are actually just tax increases on everyday goods families depend on. Let's bring back manufacturing and support union jobs. That's what will make Americans better off. And Arizonans didn't send me here to be a rubber stamp on a bad deal. They sent me here to fight for them and to stand up for them. And I'm going to keep doing that. Mr. President, I yield the floor.